Welcome to Mavens of Manufacturing. I'm Meaghan Ziemba, and today I have Nancy O'Leary with me. Really excited to have a conversation with you. How are you doing this morning, Nancy?
Fantastic.
So Nancy and I actually met through Jeff, who you work with. I did an interview a few weeks ago with Nicole Walters, and he contacted me on LinkedIn and was like, "Hey, how do you know Nicole?" And I sort of explained that, and then we scheduled the meeting, and you were involved with that meeting. So can you provide us a little more information about yourself and what you do and all the fun things you do for manufacturing?
Absolutely. And thanks so much for inviting me on today. I'm really excited. In fact, everybody here at Custom Direct is excited about this. Here at Custom Direct, we're a marketing agency, and we like to say that we are an integrated marketing solution provider. And what that really means is that we work with manufacturers to promote sustainable growth. And we can do that a number of ways, whether it's working with them on branding, content development for their website, maybe even rebuilding a website, or perhaps fine tuning it or refreshing it. And then beyond the digital, all of those printable pieces. And oftentimes when folks think about marketing, particularly within manufacturing, you think about the sell sheets and you think about work envelopes and how are you conveying that information to your prospective customers. While we're kind of coming out of not too many in-person expos, those are ramping up again. And so we're seeing a lot of interest from the folks that we work with, not only for their digital side, but also some of those printable pieces as well.
Yeah, it's funny because I used to be involved with the print side of things. And as digital became more and more popular, a lot of people were like, oh, print's dead. But it's amazing, how important that smaller piece of information is for especially sales teams and manufacturing to hand that out so that people can grab onto that and take it with them. And a lot of people do read it, a lot of just throw it away, whatever. But I think print's going to be around for a really long time still.
And that's where that integrated part comes in. Really, it's you really can't forget about the digital side if you're thinking about print, and you absolutely need to be thinking about the digital side. Even if something is strictly digital, oftentimes it's downloadable, and so that's where that print portion comes in handy. Just making sure that anything that you're providing to either existing customers or to prospects, make sure your branding is really clear. Make sure that what you're doing is really clear. We work really hard to make sure that right out of the gate, if someone lands on your website, if someone lands on your LinkedIn page, they immediately understand what your company does, where your unique is, and most importantly, how you're there to help them solve what their problem is. Because really, that's what most folks are searching for. If they're looking for either a new manufacturer to work with in a B2B situation, or it might be a customer looking for business to source from. Making sure that you're really articulating what it is that you do and how well you do it.
Absolutely. And I think that's really important too, especially when the pandemic happened. A lot of manufacturers heavily relied on that content because we couldn't go anywhere, we couldn't move anywhere. So how else are you supposed to get your brand story out there unless you really know how to market it very well? So I think everything that Custom Direct is doing, has been really helpful, especially during this time. But I'm really excited to get back to normalcy and going to those trade expos again and meeting people face to face. I really miss that part of it. So one of the other things that you're involved in is the TMA. So can you explain for those who might not know what the TMA is and what your specific role is within that organization?
Sure. So at Custom Direct, we love to be involved with different organizations and associations that work with manufacturers. We really find it helpful to understand the challenges that are going on a day-to-day basis and then year over year. What are manufacturers finding that are just heavy obstacles, whether it be something that we could help with, or more importantly, what about the industry as a whole? And so the TMA is one of those organizations. They're the Technology and Manufacturers Association. They are a very formidable advocacy group that works to ensure that manufacturing within the state of Illinois remains a really robust part of our workforce sector. And my involvement with TMA is really an organization, a committee, really, I suppose, called the Women in TMA. And we exist to help promote, foster, and advance women within manufacturing careers. And I would say that, not to jump ahead, but the part that we're really excited about is this grant that I know we were going to talk about. And we began a grant about 3 years ago now with the Women in TMA, and it's unique in a number of ways. But I would say most importantly, the part that we're all really passionate about is that it's not your typical grant. While there are some prerequisites to apply for the grant as well as to be awarded the grant is really there to benefit any woman who is working within manufacturing, primarily on the shop floor, and is looking for some assistance in order to move her career forward. And that assistance could be something as straightforward as there's a class that she needs to take. It might be English as a second language class, for instance, which oftentimes doesn't really fall within the parameter of some of the more traditional grants that are out there. It might be some specific tools that she needs in order to advance to yet an additional responsibility at her job, which would allow her to, move forward with her career. We've had folks just need additional help with childcare expenses so that they can take a class that's at night. I'm trying to think of, we've had just some really interesting situations that are, like I said, a little bit outside of the scope of most grants that are out there. And when we talked about creating this grant, that was really where we began. We began with a conversation of who do we want to help and how do we want to help them? And we wanted to make sure that the funds were available to as broad of a group of women in manufacturing as possible, but specific enough that we were making a real impact, that we were ensuring that women were able to move forward in their career as a result of some of this help from the grant.
So is this grant then specific to women who are already in manufacturing and already involved with their career pathway, or can it also be specific to maybe a high school student that's considering manufacturing as a career pathway but might need a little assistance with those college courses or apprenticeships or internships?
At this point, it's a great question. At this point, the focus is for women that are currently in a manufacturing role.
Okay.
It's definitely on the horizon. We'll be talking a little while about what's to come and who we're recruiting. There may very well be some expansion then to the grant to do just what you're suggesting so that we can help women that are interested in pursuing a manufacturing career.
So as of now, how the grant is set up currently, what are some of the things that women need to, be prepared for when applying for this grant? And can you maybe touch on some of those parameters that they need to meet in order to get the grant?
Sure. First and foremost, they need to let their direct supervisor know that they're applying. They also need to have whoever's running the company, whoever the current president is, regardless of the title, aware that they are interested in pursuing this grant and why. And the reason that that's so critically important is there is a very brief application that needs to be completed, and both the immediate supervisor and then the president or owner of the company needs to sign off that they understand that we're providing funds to this specific person in order for them to continue their path. We also ask really basic questions. You can imagine, like, what's their current role? What would they like to, what are they looking to spend the money on? That kind of thing. It's relatively straightforward. I'm trying to remember if there's anything else. That's kind of it in a nutshell.
I think it's a great opportunity because one of the things that seems to be a challenge in terms of recruiting more women to the sector is that some of them are moms and they feel like there's no opportunity within manufacturing for them to grow because they might have several kids that they're taking care of. So is that one of the things that this grant can help resolve for women who might be a little worried that they can't advance forward because of being a mom?
Exactly. There are some really unique challenges for single parent households, without a doubt. And money is only one usually a relatively big part of it. It's also time. And, and that's why I mentioned the babysitting. While we've had, I believe it's one person so far apply and awarded funds just for that purpose, it was directly linked to classes that were only available at night. And if you think about it, that's when someone would need to take classes when they're not at work. And oftentimes these are younger children that cannot be left home alone. And so our goal really is to push forward the sense of community, that we are all here to help women, regardless of whether or not they're a single parent household or not, and regardless of how high their aspirations are, how far they would like to go within the company. We just want to make sure that we're there providing some funding for them that doesn't make the money portion of it the obstacle. Let's try to help with the money that can allow the time or the tools or what have you.
That's really great. So with it only being about 3 years old, can you provide some statistics on how many grants you have provided to different women in the
Sure.
sector?
So right out of the gate, we had 6 applicants and all 6 were awarded grants. I can't really talk about the exact amount because it does vary based on each person. This last year during COVID, we had 2 applicants and I believe 1 was awarded. And last year was just such a unique year in so many ways. And so this year we are really excited. TMA itself just launched a brand new website last week. And so while it's an incredible website, there is some good information out there about the women in TMA. I believe you also have some information that you're going to make available for anyone looking for more details. And then there are some really significant events this year that the women in TMA work in collaboration with the TMA in order to just spread the word about the grant, whether it be on the fundraising side to build the grant even bigger than it is, as well as just letting manufacturers know that the grant exists so that they can in turn share it with the women that they've got working on the shop floor. Believe it or not, last year during the whole COVID experience, that was one of our bigger challenges. Was obviously folks were really busy running their companies and dealing with an awful lot of issues simultaneously, but we were looking for applicants for the grant. And we were reaching out to many folks to say, we've got this incredible grant. If you've got anyone that's interested in getting additional tools or getting additional training, we would love to talk with them. We would love to be able to share some of this grant money. And so we're excited. This year is off to a much stronger start.
So for anyone that's interested in the Women in TMA grant, Sandy Sapowicz, I hope I pronounced her name right, is the person to talk to. And I have provided her email and her phone number on there. Is there any other information, like what type of events you hold? So in case any manufacturing company or companies even outside of manufacturing, if they wanted to provide some funding for this grant, how would they learn more information about that? Is Sandy the same person to go to?
She is. So the Women in TMA hold our own events. We've got a number of events that are coming up in the fall. Of course, there was a little bit of a delay this spring just with group sizes and what have you. We decided to just move everything to the fall to be safe. But for instance, the TMA itself is hosting 2 really large golf outing events this summer. And we will be representing there. We will have a lot of information. We will also have hopefully some of the folks that were recipients of our grant from a year and a half ago there. So in terms of specific ones, sure, they're all on the TMA website. There's a calendar that shows all of the events coming up, and there's quite a few.
Okay, here's a brief flyer too that shows more about the grant. What I'll do after the show, I'll take this PDF and I'll share it on LinkedIn and put it on the Maven site so that people have quick access for it. But again, contact Sandy and she can provide more information for you as well. So outside of the TMA, Nancy, you have some experience in terms of recruiting for manufacturing as well too. And that's another topic that I wanted to talk to you about because while there is this skills gap coming up and everybody's talking about the challenges of, retaining skilled talent, it starts with recruitment, and there's a way that we need to change how we're recruiting for manufacturing to get younger generations excited about the sector and wanting to select it as a career pathway. So can you provide some of your thoughts and expertise on what you have experienced within your career and where some of the challenges are and what you think needs to change in terms of recruitment?
Sure, sure. And I'd love to give my perspective, but also please realize that when I'm talking, I'm also talking on behalf of a whole lot of dynamic women that I've had the pleasure of working with, not only at TMA, but at the Valley Industrial Association, and even folks that are at IMEC, which is a great public-private partnership that's also here to help manufacturers throughout the state of Illinois. And what we have found is a very common theme, which is there is tremendous interest in beginning recruitment at a younger age than we probably ever thought possible. And you alluded to my experience in my previous role before joining the team at Custom Direct. I handled recruiting for a college prep on the northwest side of Chicago. And what made that a really interesting pivot a bit for me for being more of a marketing person is to learn and understand just how imperative it is to speak not only to kids at a fairly young age about things that interest them, but to make sure that the information that you're giving to those kids and sharing with those kids also resonates with parents. As a parent myself, I understand that while my kids might have their own interests, particularly when they were younger, definitely not now that they're in their 20s, I had a little bit more say in what they were interested in pursuing or at least thinking about, and definitely I was able to suggest things that they might consider doing, whether it be an activity or a book to read or a game to play. I think we can kind of all relate to that. Well, for manufacturing, we've kind of been stuck in this mindset that we start talking to students when they are perhaps either ending high school or they're already at a 2-year college. And we think that that's the time to start saying, hey, have you considered manufacturing as a career? And I am a very loud advocate that while that might be great, we should be talking to students when they aren't even in middle school yet. And by that, I mean, we should be talking to students when they are in 3rd and 4th grade and providing information for families to understand what an incredible career students as young adults and throughout their whole lives can have within manufacturing. So while I'm really involved with women in manufacturing and really promoting women to consider manufacturing careers, it's really for everyone. There are some really famous people out there that are making strong inroads into promoting more shop classes in high schools, making a comeback for that. And that maybe college isn't the right career path for every single student. And we're really not even talking about that. We're talking not that manufacturing has to be something that you do instead of college. We're talking about manufacturing as an incredible career all on its own. And let's talk about what's possible and how that might be such a great fit. What makes manufacturing so particularly cool, especially for kids, if you think about it, it's all about building, it's about problem solving, it's about getting dirty sometimes and putting things together. And yet for parents, it's critically important that we explain, like for instance, Nicole Walter that you mentioned at the beginning, great example. Oftentimes folks don't really understand, first of all, how many women are running manufacturing companies. And secondly, their perception, their perceived idea of what manufacturing looks like, maybe back from like the 1950s and 60s, not necessarily at all what manufacturing is about today and the amount of technology that exists and the opportunity that exists. And that's really where our messaging is coming out really strong. Let's let parents know that their kids have some really phenomenal opportunities within manufacturing. And let's start talking about what those are.
Absolutely. I agree. I had several conversations with different individuals in different industries within manufacturing. And one conversation I had, they were talking about how a student wanted to go into the medical industry, but their idea of going into the medical industry was spending all this time, in med school to either become a nurse or a doctor or a surgeon, whatever. But when they went to a manufacturing event, they saw, a company that works with amputees and making different prosthetics and stuff and the whole process behind that. And they were like, wow, this is the industry I want to be in, but I don't have to spend all this time going to med school. I can actually do something else within graphic design and computer programming and 3D printing and still be involved in the industry, still make things with my hands and still, make a difference and provide value. But it's not going to take me that long to learn all those skills. And this is the better route. So they actually went into the manufacturing sector instead of the medical industry. And it's funny because my daughter, she is graduating next year and she wants to go into the medical industry, and she is worried about her GPA because she wants to get into a really good college in Minnesota. And the grades matter, the testing matters. And a few weeks ago, she said she bombed her ACT test, and I'm just sitting there and I'm like, well, what did you get? And it's her first time taking it. And she's like, Mom, I didn't even, her score was low, but I told her, I was like, you have always been bad at testing. You've never liked it. Your mind works differently. It doesn't mean you're a failure for life. Like, you'll be fine. And I was like, you need to understand that I know a lot of successful people who haven't even gone to college, but they knew what their passion was. And I was like, you really need to figure out what your why is and then just pursue it. Don't worry about test scores. Don't worry about what colleges are going to like you or not like you. Just figure out your why, pursue it, and you'll find a way. It will be fine.
And that's it, really, honestly. It's about pursuing passion. And that's where manufacturing can be that why. I literally got goosebumps when you start talking about, starting to work with a company with amputees. There are so many incredible manufacturing companies every single day. And this isn't a plug for Custom. It's the truth. Every single day, we are talking and working with manufacturers that play such an integral role in our day-to-day lives. Somebody is making every single thing that you touch, that you work with, that you rely on. And I know that sounds kind of like a Captain Obvious statement, but I mean, really, if you stop and think about it, it's like somebody made that, and somebody had to design the mold that made it. And somebody had to actually think, okay, wait, how can we do this better? And then once they make it, there's an entire organization that's probably putting many different pieces and parts together, and then somebody else is shipping it. And I think at times, as a society, we have focused so much on the next step for kids is to, once they finish grammar school, is high school. And sometimes that gets really competitive and kind of crazy. And then no sooner are they even in high school, usually back in grammar school, parents are already worried about college and the expense of college. And is their child going to get into where they want them to get into? Maybe it's their alma mater or what have you. I mean, that's a whole conversation in and of itself. But one of the things about manufacturing that I think is so incredible is it's not exclusionary. It's not saying that you can't have a role in manufacturing wherever you fall on the spectrum in terms of your passion to pursue higher education. So, you might be somebody that goes on to college, but are you really even thinking about manufacturing as a career? Or are you just thinking, well, I want to be an engineer and I want to go work at NASA? And I'm not slamming anybody that's doing that. It's an incredible opportunity and incredible career. But also, what about those kids that really like science, but like your daughter, they're feeling a little inhibited right now. And they're like, oh, I'm not sure if I have the grades. I'm not sure. You know what? If you follow your passion, you're going to be incredible at it, like you said. Mm-hmm. And so that's really our goal, is to make sure that messaging is out there, that we're getting in front of kids so that they can start to understand there's some really cool things that get built and how they get built. But if that information isn't also available to parents, then when a kid comes home from school and says, oh, this really cool person came in there talking about manufacturing, and your parents are like, going back thinking, oh no, you're not going to be in manufacturing. Got to have something that they bring home that resonates, that speaks to career paths, which speaks to the really cool skills that students develop. And part and parcel with that, what type of apprenticeships, and again, that could be another whole conversation, but what apprenticeships are out there, so that while students are in high school, they have the opportunity to start to learn more then about what might be available to them.
Yeah. What I find surprising too, because when I was growing up, we had some programs that were involved with like engineering and manufacturing. I remember when I got into seventh grade, we didn't have a choice of what classes we picked. They put us like in different routes, and then changed it every semester. And the first class that I had was sewing. I hated it. I didn't want nothing to do with sewing. I didn't understand it. They put me behind this sewing machine. I kept breaking the needles. The teacher kept getting frustrated with me. They ended up putting my machine on a really top shelf, and I tried to get it off, and the previous person didn't latch the back of it. So it just fell out and broke the machine in half. And she was so angry with me. And I'm like, I didn't mean to break the machine. I'm sorry. Well, then at student conferences, she was talking to my mom, and she's like, I just don't understand. Like, she was terrible at sewing, but then she goes into wood tech and she's excelling and she loves it. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm cutting things and making things. She
Yes.
just didn't understand it. And she's like, she should like sewing. It's the same thing. And I'm like, it's not the same thing.
No,
It's not. And nothing against people who like to sew and knit. It doesn't,
right.
it didn't sit well with me. So my mom just started laughing, and she's like, I really needed to tell the principal that we're not paying for that sewing machine. And she was like, they were so mad at my mom because she's like, you put her in there. Like, she didn't want to do it. So, but a lot of high schools now are really, especially in Illinois, in the area that I'm from, they're really trying to change their curriculum to include some of those hands-on experiences, and they're letting students decide which path they want to take. And we just never had that opportunity, and I just don't understand, because right now with my daughter and her friends, some of them are just so clueless because they get caught up in their phone, and they don't. I went to the grocery store with my daughter, and we went through the self-checkout line, and she's like, I don't want a bag. Can I scan things? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I was laughing so hard, and there was a lady next to us, and she was laughing too, because my daughter's like, what is this? And she was holding up a green pepper, and I'm like, it's a pepper. But how do I? And I said, look up pepper, green pepper. And she's like struggling. And the lady next to me, she's like, you're doing a very good thing for her right now.
And that was one of the things that was really
Yeah.
cool for me at my last job was recruiting, and it was for an all girls college prep. And if life doesn't have ironies, I mentioned I'm a parent. I have 4 sons. And so it was really kind of fun. I would, live my life with the boys and then go to work, and I was surrounded by really dynamic young women. And it was interesting to see the dynamics and see things just a little bit differently, how they were approaching what their next step would be, whether they were going into a career or they were going to go on to college or they were going to go on to a 2-year college. And then to see how my own kids were facing, some of those same questions. And, Meaghan, there were so many similarities, there were so many unknowns, and there were just so many times that they were so overwhelmed by so many options. We talk about how, we didn't have that. We didn't have those options. We didn't know. Sometimes too, it's overwhelming because there are so many options. And if one of those doesn't really resonate, young folks really just kind of get frozen. They just kind of get the deer in the headlights, and they don't know what to do next, which is why it's really important to start talking to kids. In grammar school, you tend to still think everything's possible. I think once you get to high school, you start to understand, okay, a little bit more about actions and consequences, and that there is going to be life after school. And, once you finish high school, you may or may not be going on to college. But in grammar school, you're just still thinking you're in school and you're going to see your buddies every day and that kind of thing. And so, when you're still kind of in that mindset, it's really important to get this idea about manufacturing there, just so that it just becomes another thing that you consider, that you really understand. For kids at that age too, they're oftentimes playing strategy games. They're learning them for the first time. Well, how much better is it then, right when they're learning all of that, that you show them that there's this whole career path that's possible, when they're not really thinking about they're going to be perhaps a mom and a dad someday, and they're going to need to go to work all day long. But to just start to show them that there are just these really cool things that they could do all day long and get paid for it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the pieces of advice that I give my daughter consistently is I told her, I'm like, if you're not ready to go to college right after high school, get a couple part-time jobs, either as like a wait, like she works at a restaurant right now as a hostess, and she's making really good money doing it. But I told her, I was like, if you want, get another job, save money, travel, go road tripping with some of your friends, experience life, go to different areas, travel the world if you want, understand different cultures, see where there's a need for something, and then decide what you like and are passionate about. Because I think a lot of kids growing up now, they get so isolated within the communities that they're in, they really don't understand some of the main issues that people are facing. So they don't know what they're passionate about. They're only seeing what's in their community. So if their community is only focused on certain things, they're not really going to understand
Well,
that there's other stuff out there.
Well, exactly. Especially if you think about the shift when you go from grammar school to high school. Oftentimes, you're going to high school with almost all the same kids that you went to grammar school with.
Yeah.
And then college is that opportunity where you get to kind of reinvent yourself and you spread your wings and you meet new people. What's really important about these apprenticeships then is that you get to go outside of that comfort zone. You're not with your buddies, you're not with everybody that you hang with, you're with adults that are doing this for a living. And it brings everybody up a notch. It kind of takes kids as they're teenagers and everything's kind of cool and funny and kind of a joke, and they kind of have to be serious for a while, and not that they can't be, but it really, I think, gives them a really great insight into respect is a two-way street. And there's a lot that gets said about teenagers and the need to show them respect. And, my own personal belief, my own personal experiences have been that any young person that, you're working with, if you, for the most part, can show them respect, maintain eye contact, you're going to get it back in spades. And as a society, I think, boy, we could all work on that. Let's help young folks that maybe need that extra little nudge, that extra little, oftentimes when teenagers can be the most obnoxious I've found. And of course, I'm not talking about my own kids, not at all. They would be lucky. It's when they feel the most insecure. And, the teenage years are difficult and they're challenging. It's when you find out a lot about yourself and, whether everything your parents told you is true or whether you still believe it and, what your friends are saying. And, if you can just shore up that sense of you can do this, man, it pays off in spades.
And that really touches on, because we attended that VIA breakfast event together, and Marty, who was the keynote speaker, that was something that she really touched on, in the importance of mentorships, and just expressing that belief in someone can really go a long way, especially if they're not confident in themselves or they're insecure. Just that one inkling of light for them can mean a world of difference. And the person that I think about right away is Andrew Crow, who I interviewed a couple of weeks ago with his student. He comes from a place where they didn't know about the opportunities in manufacturing, and he literally says, "Hey, it saved my life." And now he's trying to be that light for people in urban communities and bringing them out and saying, "You don't have to live this life. This doesn't have to be an option for you. Look at these opportunities. You can make a difference. Come over here." And so I really respect everything that he's doing. And I think this grant that the TMA has is that next step too, because it's not specific to what you have to do. You can use it for anything. And I think that's really great, especially for working moms who might be struggling with childcare or, getting a chance to go to night classes.
And believe it or not, oftentimes we're finding it's the tools, because while there's certainly many tools that are provided for companies, depending on what role somebody has at a manufacturer, they're also more comfortable bringing their own or having their own specific set. And so you can imagine that for anyone, but particularly a single parent household, when you're making decisions on what you're spending money on every month, a lot of these tools can be pretty cost prohibitive.
Yeah. So, absolutely. That's such a great point. Well, Nancy, what else can we expect from this grant from the TMA? What are some of your goals for it before
Well,
leaving our comfort zone?
this year, you mentioned it already, get back to normal. Let's get in front of folks. Let's build the grant fund and let's build the applicant base. We're really excited about the events that are coming up. And beyond that, we're looking, one of the things that you and I talked about a little bit, Meaghan, was, okay, is this going to be just for folks that are already within manufacturing? What about for folks that aren't? Well, that would be the next iterative logical step then, in collaborating with local two-year colleges and the programs that they have available, and how can we help to encourage folks to get involved and to start considering manufacturing, to take those classes, and how could this grant maybe help? It's not there just yet, but it's definitely something that we're looking at.
Fantastic. Well, before I let you go, one final question I have for you. It's actually a two-parter in case you want to pick which one. I always enjoy people coming on to Mavens of Manufacturing, and I know that Jeff reached out, but I just wanted to know, why did you want to come on to Mavens of Manufacturing? And then during this conversation, was there one question that you were hoping I asked, but I didn't?
Wow. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so the first question first. I grew up in a house, in a very traditional house where my dad worked and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. And I can tell you now, having raised 4 kids, she definitely had the tougher job, but at the time you don't realize it. But my dad was a plastics mold engineer. And so I just grew up hearing about polystyrene, polypropylene. My sisters and I were expected to know how to spell those at a very young age. My dad quizzing us on, oh my gosh, so many different calculus questions, because of course there's so much involved with mold tolerances, and I mean it goes on and on. But to me, I mean, I just grew up with the smell of manufacturing as it was, back in the 60s. And so for me, it's just such a natural fit, something that it's incredibly exciting to talk about, because I know firsthand how much manufacturing has changed and how advanced it's become. And I am so excited also, being a parent, knowing that there's these opportunities out there, not just for my kids, but for so many kids that are struggling to kind of figure out where they fit, or what they would like to do with their life, or what kinds of things can they get involved in that, can actually pay them a decent living wage. And it's such a cool time, I think, right now, because manufacturing does that. And I get to kind of pull all these different experiences over the course of my career together, and even my upbringing, and try to spread the word, make sure that young people are aware of just what's out there. Gosh, was there a question that I was hoping that you would ask me and you did not? How many cups of coffee did I have today before we got on?
How many did you have?
The answer is 3, which is usually my best. I've been trying to cut back, and everybody here can tell you, for a while I was trying to not drink any coffee before I got in the morning. But Jeff was pretty quick to say, yeah, could you go back to just having at least 1 cup? Like, why? Why are you doing this? And I don't think he meant so much for myself, but to everybody else. I've gone back to a cup in the morning.
It is hard. My husband makes fun of me because I'm not a morning person by any means. In doing all of this stuff, I've had to force myself to be a morning person, and he works 3rd shift because he's a first responder. So there's days where I have to get up at 3 or 3:30 in the morning so I can get a workout in, and then and he tries to talk to me sometimes right before I have a cup of coffee, and I just look at him and I'm like, you should already know this isn't happening right now. It's just I'm sorry. I'm like, no, not yet. Just let me get a cup and we can have a conversation. It's hard. And then I tried switching to tea, and I like tea, but it's not the same thing. I can't.
It's, I kind of associate tea with the weekends, or iced tea, it's not a Monday through Friday beverage, I don't think.
I can't. I did used to date someone who was from England, and I never knew that putting milk and sugar in tea was a thing until I dated him. And it kind of changed my opinion about it. I thought it was really, really good. I was like, yeah, I could do this, but not every single day. And then really the only other time I drink it is I don't know if everyone knows what a hot toddy is, but if I get sick, I'll make a hot toddy with whiskey and NyQuil. That's probably a little absurd, but that's what I do. And I drink it and I sleep for 8 hours and I feel better when I wake up. And my husband's like, I can't believe you drink that. And I'm like, it's good. Like, it helps with all my decongestion, my fever. It's gone. It's like,
and do you drop it into hot tea or just those?
Yeah. Nope. I usually use green tea, and then I'll do a shot of whiskey and then a shot of NyQuil, the cherry kind, and I'll put brown sugar in it, and I drink it right when it's hot. I swear that it works. A bunch of people, when I first tell them that recipe, they just look at me and they're like, "What on earth are you doing?" And I'm like, "It's an old remedy through my family. Like, I got it from generations and generations." And when I first had my daughter, one of the things that I was told, oh, she's teething, just take whiskey and ripe her gums with it. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. Why would I do that? And I've never done that. But then that was the other remedy. Oh, you're sick? Just mix this stuff together. It's a hot toddy. You'll feel better after you wake up. And I'm like, are you sure? Like, I'm not going to die doing that? And they're like, nope, it's fine. And I've done it ever since. And it's amazing. It works. It works wonders.
When you're really feeling crummy, what you need more than anything is a solid, uninterrupted 8-10 hours of sleep. And oftentimes if you're that sick, you can't, because you're congested or whatever's going wrong. You're waking up and you're tossing and turning. And if you just give your body a chance to actually rest and get that REM in, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You can wake up and slay the world the next day.
That remedy helps. It helps. It sounds disgusting, but it's actually really good. And you just chug it, go lay down, pass out for 8 hours, and you wake up
and you're going,
feeling refreshed. Yeah. And my husband's just like, you have a problem. I'm like, I don't do it all the time. It's only when I'm really, really sick. It's fine. Yeah. So home remedy is on Mavens of Manufacturing.
Meaghan and Nancy, truthful moments.
Right. Well, Nancy, thank you so much for joining me today. It's always a joy to talk to you. I look forward to continuing on collaborating with you and Custom Direct and TMA. And please, if you know anyone else that would love to share their story on Mavens, continue to connect me with them. And to everyone that joined in on our conversation, thank you so much. And if you have home remedies of how to get rid of colds and stuff,
share them.
Feel free to share them, So thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Okay, bye.
This episode of Mavens has been sponsored by Fresh Horizons Group. Fresh Horizons Group is a family-run company that was founded on the premise of helping organizations and businesses better tell their story through high-quality branded apparel and promotional items. Freshen up your brand by contacting Fresh Horizons today at freshhorizonsgroup.com.